The second your call ends, your buyer becomes your salesperson. They'll be the ones building the case for spending the money in front of a boss who wasn't in your call, who doesn't really know your products or services. So to close a deal, you need to support your buyer in any way you can to deliver your pitch. The single best thing you can do is to build a deck your buyer can walk in with. Everyone knows that this is what pushes the deal through, but not everyone does it because it takes a lot of time. It takes you away from other deals in your pipeline. So today, I'm going to show you how to build a buyer deck without spending hours on it. In fact, once it's set up, all you have to say is build deck for ABC company and hit send. So here's what's going to happen. As soon as you get off that call, a pitch deck is going to have the pain points, pricing, ROI, and the cost of waiting all automatically summarized and written based off the call that you just had with your buyer and the company information that can be found in HubSpot. So all you have to do is just forward that deck to your buyer. Now, this isn't another AI automation tool subscription. Unlike Gamma or Canva, you won't have to go back to this app every single time you have a new buyer. It's also not Zapier where you have 10 different notes stitched together and you have to fix errors all the time. You probably already have this tool and it won't be coding. It's Claude. Hey there, my name is Yuji. I spent years in data analytics, machine learning, and AI. Before I was a senior engineering lead, I spent years in front of executives and decision makers with a slide deck to help them make decisions. So I know what separates a slide deck that moves things forward from ones that just sits there. Now I help teams use AI the right way as part of their everyday workflow, not as extra work on top of the work that they already have. In this video, I'm going to show you how to talk to Claude. So you go from an empty chat to getting the slide deck that's ready to be sent. By the end of the video, you'll have a repeatable functionality, or skill as it's called in Claude, that generates a buyer deck written with your pricing and the buyer's ROI in the way you would build the buyer's deck without you actually building it or telling Claude how to build it every single time. So how does it get built without you actually building it? Now, you might have tried this with some other AI tools, or maybe you tried with Claude or ChatGPT, but here's a mind shift you need to have. In those sessions, you likely have it copied and pasted over some of the data, or had to repeat how you want it to be done every single time. This is where a lot of time gets wasted because you keep doing the same thing that's repetitive from one buyer deck to another. So we're going to completely eliminate that repetitive process in this video. Now, the raw ingredients that you need to build a deck is already there. And where it lives will probably be constant from one buyer to another. One of the problems is that they're just scattered. So you end up going to all these different platforms and tools and fetching it yourself. Like your data in the CRM, the back and forth with your clients, and the call transcripts. So far what you've done, think of yourself as a personal chef who had to shop for the ingredients and had to cook the meal. Your buyer's actual words, their pain points, objections, and the timeline, they're all in your call recordings or in your transcripts. The company, the deal size, and the price that they're paying today, they're all in your CRM. Now, normally, you'd be the one going and getting all these scattered information. But instead, Claude becomes your shopper. It's directly connected to those apps that you would normally go to get those ingredients, but it could do much faster. So now what happens is that instead of you shopping for the ingredients for the blueberry pie, you just tell Claude to get the ingredients, and you don't even have to list what those ingredients are because Claude already understands what is required to make a blueberry pie. So when you say build that deck for ABC company, it's going to search for the right calls, read the transcript, and pull the right records from HubSpot without you listing where all these information exists. Now, the second part of the mindset you need to have is that you need to stop repeating over again and again when building a deck for one buyer to another is going to be the same. Sure, the company, their pain points, the ROI, those could be different, but how you generate a buyer deck is going to be the same. The way you build the slide deck, how it should look, and how it flows from the start till the end, that's going to remain constant. And what we're doing today is addressing this exact issue. And it's also the reason it beats all the deck builder AI tools out there. Because Claude is not only the shopper in our personal chef analogy, it is also our sous chef that's personally learned from you how you like to make your blueberry pie and remembers it. So you can be the master chef that just checks in just before the pie is served. Meaning, not only Claude can get all the information on the buyer or your services, it can build a slide deck exactly the way you've asked it to, without you repeating every single time. So no copy and pasting your buyer's data about your services, your branding, or your buyer's branding, how many slides you need, and what the slides should have. If you've seen my other videos, you know that what I'm about to use is a skill. Without going in too deep, I'm just going to explain it really quickly. A skill is a very organized prompt that's written in plain English, where you write the instructions step by step and save it as a text file. And because you have a detailed step by step, it's going to run the same way every time. In this video, I'm going to walk you through from the very beginning so you can see how a skill is created from ground up. Before you go set it up, make sure that you have all the data connectors. In my previous video, I show you exactly how to do this and all the caveats, so check out this video. So for today's video, you just gotta make sure that Claude is connected to your CRM, whether that's HubSpot or Salesforce or whatever tool it is, and your email if you have a lot of email threads between you and the buyer, and lastly, your call transcripts. That could be through your Google Meet, your HubSpot, or if you have a separate transcription tools like Fathom or Fireflies. Make sure you do that now so Claude can go shop all those details for you. Before we open our Claude app and set this up, I want to quickly walk you through what this is going to look like. Note that all the steps in this yellow box are going to be inside Claude Chat. Throughout these steps, we're having this conversation with Chat where each turn we're giving pieces of information. These pieces of information are going to be what makes the skill. At the end of these steps, Claude Chat is going to give you a skill.md, which is a plain text file specifying what needs to be done in your buyer deck and the step-by-step guide. First, we're going to give Claude context to what a good buyer deck is. This could come from your own buyer deck that you've made previously, or you could ask Claude to research. If you were to go with your first option, you're going to ask it to study your buyer deck and break it down into different components and how it should write it step by step. If you're going with the second option, you're going to make sure that you are in the research mode. So here you can see that it's checked off and that it has access to web search. And in your prompt, you're going to say something like, research what makes a good champion deck that a seller provides to help close the deal in sales. You can also combine option 1 and 2. What you can do is you first ask it to do the research and ask it to compare to how you've made your own champion deck. Then you ask it to merge those two together so that it knows good practices as well as how you like to do your champion deck. Now in step 2, we're going to specify where Claude can find your information. Here I've summarized the information that you will need. So you have the buyer's company, which can be from HubSpot or the company's website. Their pain points, which also can be found in HubSpot, or directly from your calls. It's also good to have the transcripts from the other meetings so that it has all the details that it needs to make the deck. Now the green rows are the ones that's always going to change from one buyer to another, but the blue ones are probably going to be static. So we have your own brand if you decide to design the slides with your brand colors, your logos. Now, this can come from you directly by sharing a drive or images directly that shows your logo, font color, whatever it is, or you can give your company website. Now, if you choose to build a deck with the buyer's company's branding, this is going to be different. So instead of providing your own logo, you can choose to drop the buyer's company's logo or direct Claude to your buyer's company's website so it can fetch those branding itself. Even better if your buyer can provide you with some kind of the company's empty template slide deck, Claude can just fill it with its own information. Your product services are likely going to be static, but of course the focus is going to shift depending on what your buyer's pain points are. Then you have the pricing. This might be static for some of you, or it might be dynamic depending on who the buyer is. So specify that in the beginning. If it's static, give the details to what your tiers are, and depending on the size of the company or whatever it is, where the pricing should fall. If it's dynamic, then set it up so that before it generates the slide deck, it always asks you what the pricing should be. If you also have a drive of case studies, you can also connect that to your Claude. I personally like to organize the information that I'm going to give it to Claude. So I like to put it in a chart like this, or in a list somewhere. I use bullets to summarize where they can find these information. Once you're clear where your data should be, we're going to move to the next step where we're going to provide a sample deck. So here you can choose to use your own branding. If you have your own sample deck, great. If not, provide your logos, your colors, your font style, and it can come up with its own. Same with the case if you're using the buyer's company branding. Throughout steps 1, 2, 3, we've given information about how to build a champion deck, where to find the data, and what the deck should look like. Once Claude has these informations, you're going to give it a final prompt so that it comes up with the buyerdeck.md or championdeck.md, whichever you like to call. In the prompt, we're asking it to create a skill file called whichever, and it will be triggered to generate a deck for a specific buyer. And we specify that it always requires 3 inputs, which is what we've given in the previous steps. First is the research that it did on what makes a good champion deck, the data sources, and my company's branding or your buyer's company branding. If you're using your buyer's company branding, you should update this so that whenever the skill is triggered, it should ask you where to find the branding. You can also set it up so that it tries to get those branding for you by crawling on the web, but if it fails to do so, you'll have to ultimately provide it yourself. So again, depending on whose branding you're going with, you might have to update this line as well. What I have here is 2 of these are going to be constant across every use of the skill, which is the how to make the champion deck and my own branding. But what changes every time is the buyer's company and perhaps their branding. Once it hits send, at the end of the chat, you should see a skill.md, which you can save it on your computer. So far, steps 1 to 4 was done in Claude Chat. And at the end of step 4, you should have your own personal championdeck.md file. This is going to be the skill file that we feed it to Claude Cowork. The reason why we went with Claude Chat instead of going straight to Cowork is that it's much better at having conversations with you. If it has questions, it'll ask you and it'll give you feedback, and it's much faster back and forth than trying to do all this in Cowork. And now all the steps in this green box is going to happen inside Claude Cowork. So we first start off with attaching the skill.md that we had, and then we're going to give a quick prompt here saying save this as a skill called champion deck, and you must give me a button that says save the skill. Make sure that it's switched to Cowork here, not chat. Once you actually save it as a skill, then you can trigger it. So here in this new chat or Cowork session, I use the \champion deck or whatever the name of the skill you've decided. And then I say simply build a champion deck for company ABC, and you hit send. Once it returns a slide deck for you, you can choose to continue working on it, or you can click on the button and forward to your buyer. So that was the overall setup. I'll show you what that looked like on my end. Note that this could look slightly different on your end depending on which option you went with, whether that was to use one of your previous buyer deck or ask it to research what makes a good slide deck. In my case, I gave a little introduction to what I'm trying to do here, which is to build the champion deck, and then I asked it to do research what makes a good champion deck. I also threw in some extra questions that I had, and then it came up with a summary of what it thinks it's a good slide deck. After it gives you a summary, you can decide to argue with it if you're not happy with it, or give your own personal knowledge and experience. In my case, it said that I should slightly change the deck depending on who the audience is, whether the buyer was going to send this to the CEO, CFO, or some other stakeholder. Now, in my experience, once the buyer has that deck, they're going to end up showing to every stakeholder. So I argued saying that it should just have a slide deck that all the stakeholders would be happy about, meaning it not just hits the pain points, it should also have ROIs, which usually CFOs are interested in, as well as pricing. And I also asked how the audience still matters. And it gave me some feedback here, but I said, doesn't matter to me. Then it decided it's going to generate the full deck, including all the information stakeholders would be interested in. Then I gave my data sources and what my branding looks like by giving it access to the drive where I have the logo, the colors, and the font. And at the end of this chat, it gave me skill.md. You can see how it's in plain English with a summary of what the skill should do and the step-by-step, where it should get the data sources, and how the deck should be structured. And at the end, what the output should look like. If you're not happy with the guideline that I created, you can always go back to the chat and interact more to give your feedback so it's closer to how you would create your deck. You're going to save the skill.md with this download button, and then we're going to open a new session. And this time we're going to use Cowork, not chat. So make sure to switch it over to Cowork. Then you're going to paste the skill.md that you saved, and we're going to call a skill called Skill Creator. This is a skill that's going to help us create this new skill, and it's downloadable within the Claude app. If you don't know how to set this up, check out my previous video. So this is my session. I call the Skilled Creator skill here, so we can create a new skill. I instructed to use the following .md file to save as a skill called champion deck. And at the end, you must surface a button that says save skill. So it went ahead, did some tests, and at the end gave me a skill. In my screen, it says update skill because I was testing it before. On your end, it should say save skill. So go ahead and click that button. Once you've created and saved the skill successfully, you should be able to see it whenever you click on the plus button. And under skills, you should be able to see your new skill pop up. So whenever you need to trigger this skill, you're going to click that plus button, skills, and click on your skill. When you're ready to trigger that skill, open up a new Cowork session. Make sure to click on your new skill and then give it a quick prompt. So in my case, I have this fake data with a fake company called Cascade. It went ahead, created a slide deck for me. And at the end, there is an option to open it in Google Drive or just manually download it. If I click on it, I can see the preview on the right side over here. So it used my branding here, the logo and the color and the font. After the title slide, it had a slide for the pain points, what it will cost to not do anything, what the proposal is, how we intend to help this company, what the expected outcomes are, and why this approach instead of a traditional approach, some relevant case studies, the ROI here, the pricing, the implementation from the buyer side, what the risks are, and what the next steps should be. And in our last few slides, we have a few objection slides. If you need to change the look of the slide or some of the details, you can directly ask Claude to do it in the same session. And once you're happy with it, save it and forward it to your buyer. And that's it. If you want to see what my skill.md looks like, head over to my GitHub repo and click on Cowork Champion Deck repository. There you'll find the folder Fast Track, click on that, and you'll find Champion Deck template. This was my skill, but you can fill it with your own details. If you want to use the exact prompt that I used to create my draft skill, click on Create Draft Skill Prompt.md. I put the link to my GitHub repo in the description below. The first few times you generate your deck, I highly recommend that you go through every detail to ensure that it's generating the deck in the way that you want and that's free of mistakes. There's going to be more back and forth between you and Claude when you're starting it out. So here's a tip. Whenever you catch a mistake, ask why it made that mistake. Then ask how you can update the skill.md so it doesn't make that mistake again. Then ask it to update the skill itself. I've already made a video showing how to update your skill, so if you ever need help, check out this video. Originally, I intended this video to create the slide deck in either Google Drive or the Microsoft 365. To do this in Google Drive, you first create the slide deck in the .pptx file, and then try to open in Google Slide. But with the Microsoft Suite, it's a lot more complicated. You first have to be a part of the team, and that team has to be on a business plan. If you have this, you may be able to create it in the Claude app, but the easier way would be to just go to Microsoft 365, open your PowerPoint app, and use the Copilot AI in there. Personally, I think this is Microsoft's way of preventing their users to moving over to Claude and stop using Copilot AI. I find that asking Claude to just generate a button where you can just save it manually and forward it is the most straightforward way. But if you would like me to cover other ways of generating a slide deck, whether that's for Microsoft users or Google users, let me know in the comments below. If today's video helped you, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel for more useful AI tips. And if you have any feedback or any topics you'd like me to cover in the videos, make sure to leave it in the comments. Thanks guys, and I'll see you in my next video.